Manx Radio's Update with Beth Espey.
Well, first am I, good evening and welcome to Update, your fast-paced rundown of today's top stories from around the Isle of Man. Coming up before 5:30, expectant mothers on the island are still missing out on parentcraft sessions, both in person and online. Why is that, and are you affected? Also tonight, the Chief Minister sat down with the UK Security Minister. What was on the agenda there? And earlier, we caught up with the Lieutenant Governor at Oakle's Brewery. What brought him there? Stay tuned to find out. We'll also have the latest weather plus updates on the traffic and travel to keep you moving, hopefully, on your way home tonight. And of course, we'd love to hear from you. You can text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. We'll start with a look at the top news headlines with Christian Fastamai.
Fastamai, the Chief Minister, says face-to-face talks with the UK Security Minister were constructive.
We must continue to work with international partners, and particularly the United Kingdom, in threat assessments, exchange of information.
Alfred Cannon visited the Home Office in London alongside his counterparts from Jersey and Guernsey. The way new mothers are referred for support from Manx Care's infant feeding team has changed. A new referral system is now in place, replacing the previous practice of IFT staff visiting the maternity unit. Onchan MHK Rob Callister is calling for a full traffic management review alongside the rollout of 20 mph speed limits in residential areas. Although Rob Callister supports the move, he questions the Department of Infrastructure's soft-touch approach to enforcement. And Oakle's has unveiled a brand new canning machine, which means all of its beer will now be fully produced on the Isle of Man.
175 years is a fantastic achievement. Oakle's has been very much part of the Isle of Man and its community for all that time. I think it's really exciting to see the investment that's still ongoing, the investment that they say they've been putting in for well over a century.
That's Enterprise Minister Tim Johnston there. He attended alongside the Lieutenant Governor, who formally opened the line this morning. In the latest international news now, and police think a PhD student who's been found guilty of drugging and raping 10 women in London and China could have 50 more victims.
If all these do bear out to be potentially serious sexual assaults or rapes, then ultimately this may make Zoe one of the most prolific offenders in the United Kingdom.
A court has heard how Zhenhao Zhou, who's 28, filmed 9 of the attacks as souvenirs. Donald Trump's national security advisor appears to have confirmed the US is pausing intelligence sharing with the Ukrainians. Mike Waltz says America has taken a step back to review its relationship with Kyiv. And Lewis Hamilton says he still has things to learn ahead of his Ferrari debut at Formula One's season-opening Grand Prix in Australia.
It will start to sink in a little bit as the weekend kind of arrives.
The first race of the campaign's in Melbourne a week on Sunday. Those are the Update News headlines next at 6.
Thank you very much indeed, Christian. Now the weather brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. Dry with clear intervals this evening. Still feeling quite breezy though. So a fresh to strong southwest wind. Minimum temperatures overnight will be around 6. It'll stay dry tomorrow morning. Some clear or sunny intervals possibly at first. Then it is going to turn cloudy with outbreaks of rain developing in the late afternoon and early evening. The winds will be fresh southerly. Best temperatures tomorrow around 11. And then Friday again, cloudy with the risk of rain at times. Sunset this evening will be at 3 minutes past 6. Sunrise tomorrow morning, 6:56.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
Firestone Rubber Roof Shop for one-piece flat roofing systems. No joins, no leaks. We also line commercial box gutters in one piece up to 60 metres with a 20-year written warranty against leakage. Call Rubber Roof Shop on 49667.
A great night's sleep got even better with Zed's Bedding Store. From quality Beldorm bed linen and mattress protectors, fleece and woven throws to luxury duvets from the fine bedding company. Zed's Bedding Ramsey, next to Isle of Man Bank.
For a wide range of wood-burning stoves and a complete installation service, visit The Snug in Ramsey. And we don't stop there. Kiln-dried firewood and full aftercare service, including chimney sweeps and maintenance. Call The Snug in Ramsey.
Many people are struggling. You can help by volunteering or making a donation to Isle of Man Food Bank, whether it be food or essential items or financial support. Please call 646 999, brought to you by Descon Office Interiors.
You're listening to Update here on Manx Radio and it's coming up to 5 past 5. So as we heard in the opening then, pregnant women on the Isle of Man still aren't being offered any parentcraft sessions, either in person or virtually. Now, this is despite an assurance from the Health and Social Care Minister that new online resources would be available by early February. Well, news editor Tessa Hawley is with us in the studio now. I guess the first question, Tessa, is what does this mean for those expecting a baby at the moment?
Well, in short, it means that the Isle of Man's health service isn't offering pregnant women any additional support away from their routine appointments. Now, parentcraft sessions for women used to be run by midwives on a Saturday and were effectively designed to prepare women for their impending labour and birth and provide an opportunity to ask lots of questions. But they stopped last year, something which sparked concerns from those expecting and some of our politicians.
And on that, I do understand this topic was raised in the House of Keys earlier this year. What did the Health and Social Care Minister say at that point?
That's right. So Douglas East MHK Joni Farragher asked Claire Christian why they'd been stopped and about the feedback her department had received which had led to this decision. Now, she was told that whilst the DHSC felt parentcraft sessions were essential for educating and supporting expectant parents, feedback had indicated that they should be delivered in a more accessible and flexible way. Minister Christian said offering pregnant women videos to watch about things like labour, newborn care, breastfeeding and postnatal recovery would mean the content could be accessed at any time and could be scaled to reach more parents. And importantly, they were told that those resources would be available at the start of February.
OK, so I think for some people that does sound like it might be a good way of absorbing all the information ahead of childbirth. So how's it been received?
Well, that's just the issue. It hasn't been. So these videos, as of today, the 5th of March 2025, do not exist in the public domain. Now, Manx Radio has been looking into this for some time and we put in a Freedom of Information request to try and unpick the rationale behind this decision. And today we've had some of those questions answered. The information we've received includes minutes from a meeting held by Manx Care at the start of August last year, stating that the decision to move parentcraft in a new direction was due to difficulties covering the sessions. But as I said before, the online model still hasn't come to fruition and we're now 8 months on from that meeting, which is almost the length of a pregnancy.
So when the Health and Social Care Minister discussed this in January, she said the decision wasn't due to cost. Do we know, though, how much the face-to-face sessions were costing to run?
Well, thanks to that FOI that we submitted, we do. So Manx Care says running the women's sessions would have cost around £468 each time. That's to pay 2 midwives for the 8.5-hour session. Now, interestingly, and something that's been a bone of contention for our listeners, is that the face-to-face sessions for expectant fathers have continued. And by contrast, these 2.5-hour meetings cost £104.
And what about the feedback the Minister spoke of, which reportedly led to this decision in the first place?
Well, that's also interesting. So we asked for all correspondence received by Manx Care concerning the feedback, which reportedly provided the rationale, and we were provided with a short list of 12 bullet points. As for what they said, well, from first glance, it doesn't appear to be an overwhelming vote of support for going online. Whilst one person said they wanted to receive the information in video form, and another said existing videos could have been improved, people actually seem to be asking for more practical support instead, which clearly can't be delivered via a video.
Tessa, thank you very much indeed. More on this story, as ever, at manxradio.com. And we'll also be speaking to Douglas East MHK Joni Farragher, who is a politician who raised this issue in the House of Keys on Manx Radio Breakfast tomorrow morning. So we're sort of staying with a similar theme now. It's coming up to 9 minutes past 5 because we've got a response to another Freedom of Information request submitted by us, which has revealed that the process of how new mothers are referred for support from Manx Care's infant feeding team has changed. Now, a referral mechanism is now in place, and this replaces visits to the Jane Crookall maternity unit by the feeding team staff. Siobhan is with us now. She's been looking at this. Siobhan, what do we know about this first?
So this change was implemented in December 2024. Previously, the infant feeding team staff went into the Jane Crookall unit every day to make referrals for infant feeding support. However, Manx Care says this was deemed time-consuming and as a result reduced the time for the team had for face-to-face supportive visits elsewhere. The health body insists the team's model of service delivery hasn't changed, though.
So what does the model look like then?
Well, Manx Care says the infant feeding team has primarily delivered its service in the community setting since 2020. 2020. It says staff visit mothers and their babies in their own home to help promote and sustain breastfeeding, make routine telephone contact with every mother to assess what support may be required, and run infant feeding clinics and the Breastfeeding Buddies group. They also work alongside colleagues in the health visiting team to ensure continuity of care to mothers and their babies, and advise and support their health visiting colleagues with breastfeeding and deliver breastfeeding training throughout the care group.
So you just mentioned the way referrals are made has changed. What does that now look like?
Yeah, so like you say, in response to a Freedom of Information request submitted by Manx Radio, Manx Care confirmed the new referral mechanism allows the Jane Cruckle Maternity Unit, Neonatal Unit and Children's Ward to make referrals for infant feeding support, which are then reviewed on a daily basis and actioned accordingly. The rationale for this is that the team can receive referrals in a more, quote, efficient, effective way. This all follows speculation published on social media earlier this year that the infant feeding team was being discontinued. On the 3rd of February, Manx Care said there was no change to the support being provided by the infant feeding team, but rather the location of the team had changed. Manx Care offered the assurance that that move would not impact the delivery of support to families. That's why we put in this Freedom of Information request in the first place. That FOI has also revealed there are no full-time equivalent members of staff within the infant feeding team. This year, there are 5 part-time equivalent staff members, and that's up from 4 last year.
Thank you very much indeed, Siobhan. And again, more on this at manxradio.com. 5:11 and Onken MHK is calling for a full traffic review to go hand in hand with the rollout of 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in residential areas across the island. Rob Callister supports the lower speed limits, which have been campaigned for over many years, but he's questioning whether the Department of Infrastructure is being too lenient when it comes to enforcement. But he also says there are other bigger issues that need addressing too.
Because we know it early in the morning that Signpost Corner is completely blocked. We know the Governor's Bridge is completely blocked, and we know the White Bridge Road coming through Onken is blocked. So this isn't just about introducing 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, and I have to worry that reducing the speed through the village will create longer tailbacks. So this is great news. But I want to see the department actually now do the proper job of having a full evaluation of traffic going through, especially my constituents in Onken, especially when the mountain road is closed, which happens on a number of occasions throughout the year, especially during TT.
One of the main purposes of this is to promote behavioural change among drivers to normalise slower driving in built-up areas. Do you think that drivers typically will adhere to the rules?
I hope they do, and I hope the community of the Isle of Man will embrace the idea. But it isn't just about 20-mile-an-hour zones. This goes beyond this. Let's have a full review of traffic management going into the capital. Let's try and think of ideas to reduce some of the traffic going into the capital. Let's make the island, a better place to live and work.
Onken MHK Rob Callister talking to Christian there. The Infrastructure Minister says they'll be keeping a close eye on the impact of the changes to see how effective they are. 5:13. Well, the Chief Minister says high-level talks with the UK Security Minister, Dan Jarvis, covering a number of key areas of mutual interest, were very constructive. Alfred Cannon and his counterparts from Jersey and Guernsey attended the meeting at the Home Office in London this week. The 90-minute session covered progress on access to beneficial ownership, tackling illicit finance, and cooperation between the Isle of Man and the UK on law enforcement. The Chief Minister told Simon Richardson it was his first face-to-face meeting with the UK Minister.
Quite a significant meeting in terms of the approach that came from Dan Jarvis's team. I was there with my counterparts from Jersey and Guernsey, and Dan had a fairly impressive lineup. It was a fairly extensive meeting that took place over an hour and a half. So, yes, in terms of the time that was allocated to it, the numbers of people that were at the meeting, certainly things had scaled up a bit since I last met with Tom Duganhart.
Constructive discussions, you described them as, but an area of disagreement between the Crown dependencies and the UK government surrounds access to beneficial ownership information. Why is this such a thorny issue?
Well, I don't think there's too much disagreement. I think we're all on the same pathway in terms of acknowledging that open registers of beneficial ownership are on the way. It's just the pace that they are being delivered. We have complied with the international standards around that. There was an earlier time scale set by the European Union, and a timescale that both ourselves and the UK had signed up to. But a European Court of Human Rights ruling in terms of the right to privacy stalled the full open agenda for beneficial ownership, and has meant that actually we've had to take this more in stages. So already on the Isle of Man, the register is open for what we call obliged entities, essentially for business-to-business inquiries. We're working on legitimate interest, which is those other agencies which have a legitimate interest in accessing the beneficial ownership register. And as we move that process forward, then obviously we're watching very carefully as to how the European Union takes this forward to full transparency. So we're sitting in line with the international standards. We're committed to working with the UK towards achieving that. But this is also about cooperation that we have between the security and intelligence agencies, both here on the Isle of Man and in the UK. We had an exchange of notes some years ago in terms of our cooperation with the United Kingdom security agencies. That was part of the discussion. That's working incredibly well. And in fact, one of the key points I was making from an Isle of Man perspective to Dan Jarvis was that with over 19,800 registered beneficial owners, in the last 3 years, we've only had 3 urgent inquiries and 30 non-urgent inquiries in terms of that exchange of information that's been requested between the intelligence agencies. I think that's a pretty good track record for 19,800 registered beneficial owners. And I think I should pay tribute actually to the quality, therefore, of the due diligence that has been done by the business community.
That is the Chief Minister talking to Simon Richardson there. Much more to that interview. You can find it as a Manx newscast on our website. I've had a message in from texter ending 945 who says, as a former chairperson of the National Childbirth Trust, I cannot overstate the importance of parentcraft lessons. They teach a huge range of skills and support women through a life-changing time. So say much more on that story at manxradio.com.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Well, nothing to report on the police pages. Just a few things to look out for on your drive home. Guernsey or Bainacarrica, there are temporary lights on Shore Road near the Shore Pub. They're 24 hours a day. That's for emergency repairs to a burst water main. Also down south, Port St Mary, temporary lights on 4 roads. That's near the railway station. That's again for repairs to a burst water main. And in Ramsey until the 7th of March, temporary lights on May Hill, 24 hours a day. That's for sewer work. All looking okay down at the airport, and the latest then from the steam packet. The Manxman is due into Douglas Harbour in around 20 minutes or so, and we'll be heading out again for Heysham at 7:15.
Ask how you can spread the cost interest-free at Quayside.
It is 5:17 We're going to stay with the idea of travel because the Department of Infrastructure is in talks with a contractor in Liverpool for a capital dredge in Douglas Harbour. Now, this is from the DOI Minister after the Manxman got stuck as it attempted to dock over the weekend, something we talked about on this programme earlier this week. Now, a capital dredge would require a bigger vessel that would reduce the mud levels at the harbour, as Dr Michelle Haywood explains.
That particular bit of mud where the Manxman got stuck, it's been known about since last year, and as I said on Monday, it was that unfortunate confluence of the high pressure that pushed the tide down further and the very low tides that you get this time of year. We know that is due to repeat again at the end of the month. Not necessarily the high pressure, that's a weather, and I can't predict that far ahead. I'm not that good. But certainly the tide will be really low at the end of the month as well, and it will coincide with the schedule that the steam packet have. They're aware of that, and I think we can see them moving their schedule around. And to be fair, if you go back over the history of the steam packet, schedules did used to move fairly regularly for tidal conditions in ports, and it's only in recent years that we've got to a more settled schedule. So they're back to doing a bit of more planning around that, but the plan is, from the department's perspective, is to get that dredge done, to get the levels down in the harbour.
Any timescale on that?
We're working on it at speed at the moment. We already have a contractor that we use for dredging in Liverpool, and we're busy talking to them, so we're just working through that process at the moment.
And for those listening to us now who are looking at travelling on the Manxman in the next few months, or whenever it might be actually, for visitors to the Isle of Man, will this be a more regular dredging process to avoid these kind of issues we've had over the last few days happening again?
The capital dredge actually doesn't need to happen that often. the equipment that the harbours have can really, I was going to say, it like smooths out the icing. It can level off in the harbour, but it doesn't remove large amounts of material. The capital dredge will remove large amounts of material, and then gradually that will fill back up as sediment gets carried down the river or as sand gets washed back into the harbour, depending on the weather conditions. And so that will happen over a period of time. So it just hasn't happened for a while, and we need to catch up with it.
DOI Minister Dr Michelle Haywood speaking on Breakfast with Ben this morning. I had a message from Andy to say the Vessel Finder app, which is great, isn't it? Between that and the plane app, I'm completely sorted. But the Vessel Finder app also shows the Ben McCree is on its way here. Why? Not sure, Andy. Maybe somebody will be able to let us know. 5:20, Manx Telecom says the big takeaway from an AI readiness survey on the Isle of Man is that many people just aren't sure whether they can actually use AI in their workplace. Now, this report shows more people are engaging with AI, especially younger professionals and managers, but there are still big gaps when it comes to training, awareness and company policies. More than half of managers say they are using AI, but only 26% of organisations have a formal strategy for it. Chief Technology Officer Hugo Van Zyl says the speed at which AI has taken off is a big part of this challenge.
People have access now to certain tools, so for example, ChatGPT or Gemini, and acknowledging that these things are in the cloud and that the data is in the cloud. So I think being very prepared actually to have a governance structure in place to be clear to employees what they can and can't and should not use those tools for. And I think then secondly, also being more specific and just doing a scan in the organization about what software solutions are available already and integrated in certain companies, because you'll find that especially with things like Microsoft, which most companies use, there's already a fantastic AI capability through Copilot, and that's something that can be used in a safe way because the data is still with the organization. And then even if you scan other possible software solutions that might be in the company, you'll find that some of those solutions already incorporate AI and is actually already something that's available. But identifying those and just taking a step back to say, well, what is there and what can be used capably is what is required.
And I suppose in many ways there are still a lot of concerns about how AI can be used. The report itself highlights 79% of respondents are worried about how AI could use their personal data potentially without consent. I mean, how should businesses actually address those concerns while still embracing AI?
Yeah, I mean, that for me is probably the most important point. It's back to what I said earlier. It's making sure that when AI tools are used, that it specifically makes sure that the data is secure. So in other words, the easy example, if people are using ChatGPT or Gemini or tools like that there's clear governance to make sure that company sensitive data is not uploaded into the cloud.
That is MT Chief Technology Officer Hugo Van Zyl talking to Christian there. Interestingly, if you're interested in AI, Digital Isle of Man has got a podcast which you can find at manxradio.com talking about how Manx businesses adapt to AI and can maintain relevance in an increasingly competitive and dynamic landscape. Very, very interesting chat if you're interested in this particular area. Now, Oakles Brewery has officially opened a brand new canning machine today. It means all of its beer will now be fully produced on the island instead of being exported off island for the process. And it's a state-of-the-art facility which was formally opened by Lieutenant Governor Sir John Lorimer this morning. The Enterprise Minister Tim Johnston was also there and says Oakles sets a great example to other Manx producers.
175 years is a fantastic achievement. Oakles has been very much part of the Isle of Man and its community for all that time. So I think it's really exciting to see a new product. I think it's really exciting to see the investment that's still ongoing, the investment they've been putting in for well over a century into the island. So I think it's fantastic to see that. So we're delighted to be here tasting and looking at their new products and the new smoked porter ale today that's coming off the canning line. So it's fantastic to see His Excellency opening that new line.
And do you think it can be an example to other brands in terms of trying to think of innovative ways to try and keep as much of the production process on island?
Yeah, I think that it's always a challenge. We get that. We understand some of the logistical challenges of obviously being on a small island, and that can be difficult. So they recognise the importance of having a strong brand and having that strong customer loyalty. And I think Oakles have got that, and they've had that for, as I say, 175 years. So that's something to celebrate. And I think if we can get some of that magic dust to rub off on the wider food industry on the island, that would be brilliant.
That is the Enterprise Minister Tim Johnson talking to Amy. You can find a video about that at manxradio.com and on our YouTube channel as well, and more about that on Breakfast tomorrow. Sport time now. Here's Darren.
Good evening. Starting with last week's news that the Ramsey Sprint has been cancelled for 2025. Ramsey Town Commissioner Rob Cowell has explained why the cancellation will be a big blow to the town.
It's part of the TT in Ramsey. I haven't shied away from the fact that I think in recent years, or the last decade or so, it's definitely been a declining event, which is difficult to see. How do you drive traffic back to that kind of event? And I think they've just got to a point where they thought they've reinvested in other things, and obviously in terms of return, I don't think the return was there for them to have the appetite to come back, sadly. So 2025 is out of the question. I have not heard from them in terms of 26. We don't know what's going to happen, and it is a shame for the town, but we morph, we move forward, we look to opportunity, and hopefully we'll see something new. We are pretty bad, I think, at marketing the town in terms of we've got a lot of track that runs through the centre of town. We haven't got a fan zone. We haven't got any massive commercial sponsorship that comes to Ramsey. The town hall boardroom, amazing view, vista, balcony, etc., very underutilised. The whole town hall's underutilised. We do not attract the big names to Ramsey, and we need to say, let's not focus so much on Douglas all the time, and can we put some investment into the north or even around the track.
Ramsey Town Commissioner Rob Cowell. And in darts, the Isle of Man Darts Festival is set to start tomorrow. England Darts will host the event, which will run from Thursday the 6th of March to Sunday the 9th of March. The prize money this year will top £30,000 and attracts hundreds of top darts players from around Europe. Over the years, Isle of Man International Darts Festival has become a stage for future champions. Current PDC World Champion Luke Littler and past World Champions Phil Taylor and Gary Anderson have all triumphed at previous festivals.
Thank you very much indeed, Darren. And I'm not much of a dart player. I don't know if Darren plays darts. Maybe we'll have to have a little go one day on the programme. Thank you very much indeed for your company this evening. That is pretty much all from Update tonight. But as ever, as I say, do go to our website this evening. There's plenty more on all of our top stories on there, and including some of the longer form interviews as well. Coming up on Breakfast tomorrow, there will be much more talking about the Oakles Brewery, which is a great news story. We love a good news story here at manxradio.com, and also finding out more about the parentcraft sessions, which are clearly affecting many people. We'll be speaking to the MHK who raised that in the House of Keys, Joni Farragher. But do stay tuned to Manx Radio tonight. Coming up next, it is Spotlight with Howard Kane, brought to you by the Isle of Man Arts Council. Be finding out about a new history book, amongst other things, trying to make Manx history accessible to people over here. After that, Chris Kinney has greatest hits from 6 p.m. Ernie Thorne brings you Ernie's Eclectic from 9, and then Rhiann Evans will be with you from 10 with After Hours. Have a great evening. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.